Israel's history hits a breaking point in 1 Samuel. The Philistines capture the Ark of the Covenant, and a corrupt priesthood crumbles. A dying woman, giving birth in the middle of this chaos, names her child Ichabod, a Hebrew word meaning, "the glory has departed." Looking at this spiritual and leadership vacuum, the Israelites panic. They demand a centralized, human king to rule over them, so they can operate exactly like the surrounding nations. They get exactly what they ask for in a man named Saul. He belongs to the tribe of Benjamin. He is exceptionally handsome, and he stands head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the country. On paper, he is the perfect geopolitical leader. But his model of leadership contains a fatal flaw. Saul relies entirely on human logic and managing outward optics. He completely bypasses internal reverence and strict obedience to divine instruction. Demanding a leader based solely on visual strength and conformity creates a hollow facade. When actual pressure is applied, that facade collapses. We see that collapse during a conflict with the Amalekites. Saul disobeys a direct, explicit command from God, choosing instead to spare the enemy king and keep the best livestock. It is an act of blatant disobedience that causes the Spirit of God to leave him entirely. This diagram shows two scales comparing external metrics against internal alignment. 1 Samuel states, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." David and Goliath's duel tests this, a massive spear versus 5 smooth stones backed by divine authority. Before the fight, Saul tries to force David to wear his heavy bronze helmet and armor. David tries it on, realizes he cannot even walk in it, and rejects the worldly equipment entirely. David steps onto the battlefield with a completely different victory condition. He tells the giant that the battle belongs entirely to divine authority, rendering every physical advantage Goliath possesses completely irrelevant. True authority is never derived from the weapons, armor, or raw resources a leader wields. It is forged through an unyielding alignment with a higher truth. This chart plots their paths. Women sing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s." Saul descends into violent paranoia, massacring 85 priests at Nob. David, hunted in Adullam and En-Gedi, is refined, penning psalms and cementing his reliance on God. The ultimate test of David's character happens in the dark. On 2 separate occasions, once in a cave at En-Gedi and later in the wilderness of Ziph, David is perfectly positioned to assassinate a sleeping Saul. Both times, David refuses to strike. He declares he will not lay a hand on God's anointed, letting divine justice run its course. Guided by the wisdom of figures like Abigail, he actively stops himself from seizing power through bloodshed. Outward success and the desperate grip on power breed a fatal paranoia. But the loss of power, when met with deliberate obedience and patience, builds a character capable of handling the weight of a crown. Saul hits rock bottom as the Philistines amass for a final battle. Terrified and completely cut off from divine guidance, he sneaks away in the dark to the town of Endor. He consults a witch, a practice he himself had outlawed, in a desperate bid to speak to the dead. The downward trajectory ends on Mount Gilboa. Surrounded and defeated by the Philistine army, Saul takes his own life. With the recent death of the prophet Samuel, the man who bridged the era of judges to the monarchy, Israel is left in a total political vacuum. Earlier in this history, Samuel established a stone called Ebenezer, meaning, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." As David prepares for the throne, this concept of total reliance becomes his foundation. He isn't taking power through his own cunning, but through a recognized history of divine support. We are left with the final destinations of the 2 men. Saul's pride and disobedience drove him from the throne directly into the graveyard. David's humility and obedience led him from the cold floors of a cave directly to the throne. The sweeping narrative of 1 Samuel leaves a singular lesson. True leadership is never secured by the crown you wear or the optics you project. It is secured by obedient integrity in the dark.